Hello. It's 9:30 p.m. CST on a Tuesday. That's not our usual time, but welcome back to Technopoverty. I'm Henry. We've been reading The Iron Dream by Norman Spinrad while playing Medal of Honor. For those of you who don't know, that's kind of Technopoverty's whole deal. We play video games as an excuse to read books as an excuse to play video games, and bounce the two between each other with you, the chat. It's going to be a very chatty episode tonight. So we finished The Iron Dream the other day. We also finished Medal of Honor and started Conscript. And I read the afterword live here on the stream. And it hit me with some interesting revelations and some interesting lore. The implications and just the ideas and the way it kind of reconfigures my thoughts on what came before it. I've just been stewing in that. I did it full verge here yesterday and was surprised on chat. But I mean, in the past 24 hours, I've been thinking a lot about this book. And I've been thinking a lot about some of the stuff that was said in the chat. Just to kick that off, yesterday when we started Conscript, we were talking about World War I, and you were talking about it being the realization of industrialism coming to be as far as like this machinery made for war. I find it interesting in the afterword that there was no World War II. You know what? Speaking of World War II, let's just talk about this game while playing tonight's featured game, Medal of Honor Underground. We beat Medal of Honor, and I want to play Underground just to see what the sequel ends up feeling like. I want to see what they worked on, what they improved, what they changed. But I do want to continue talking about The Iron Dream. I should probably catch some of you up on what The Iron Dream actually is. Before that, let's just fire up the game. Ah, yes. All right, so copyright 2000, this is a year later. I believe DreamWorks sold this to EA at some point, and maybe this game was the first one distributed by EA, and then the franchise was purchased afterwards. All I know is we are now in the French Resistance. What's up, Mask for Mask?
First World War. Victory had been ours, but we would soon fail at the peace that followed. Our leaders appeased the growing evil instead of fighting it, sacrificing our future. We vainly reinforced our borders with concrete while we evacuated our children from the cities. There was something terrible brewing with our old enemy, and no one seemed able to stop it. The world was about to find out what happens when an entire nation is swept by madness. What would you do? Surrender?
Only in the fiction of a madman sci-fi author like Adolf Hitler. Okay, there's a bit more of an emotional gravitas to it. Got it. Also, I believe I'm playing as Manon, the female French Resistance member who was feeding you orders in the first Medal of Honor game. Let's see what the controls are looking like. But just to catch everyone up, once again, The Iron Dream by Norman Spinrad is an alternate history novel about a time where Adolf Hitler, instead of ascending to power in the 1920s, ends up immigrating to America, becomes a science fiction guy, eventually publishes his own science fiction books. The Lord of the Swastika, the novel within the novel, is his hyper-racist fantasy. No, let's keep crosshairs off. I think that will make it similar to the first game in control style. Jojo Rabbit, also about Adolf Hitler and in a fantastical manner, not handled anywhere near as well as what The Iron Dream was, which was 14 chapters of a madman fascist white power fantasy, thinly veiled in fantasy sword and sorcery innuendo, and then an afterword by a fake historian just psychoanalyzing the work, the author, and the society that produced it. In broad, as we saw, it's very much about how there's a fascist tendency in American culture, regardless of what happened with World War II, and that the American people are primed for this sort of, I guess you could say, exceptionalist, individualist, fascist hero narrative.
Bonsoir, Manon. I'm sorry to call you over on such short notice.
Mask. Oh, hold on, Mask.
Remember that Danish boy who lives below me? You know, Niels, the one who keeps asking me about the resistance. He's always saying that he wants to join because his home country is occupied just like France. I didn't think he was serious, but tonight he's brought me a tip that we should definitely take advantage of. Remember how the Nazis took over the Paris Academy of Music and started using it as a makeshift armory? Niels said that they're transferring a whole truckload of ordnance later tonight from there to the Gestapo field office in Dubuisson. He stole a copy of the manifest and showed it to me. The truck will be carrying crates of ammunition, explosives, small arms, and even a few heavy machine guns. Just the kind of supplies we need to restock our weapons cache. I will need you to be my lookout tonight while I hijack the truck. It should be fairly simple, since the Germans won't be expecting us. When this is all over, we may have a new member for our little resistance team. As always, if we get separated, head for the catacombs and meet up with the people there.
The catacombs, eh? We can go under Prairie?
It's getting late. We'd better move out.
Okay. Mask, that's wild. At first I thought you were making a joke, just that Hitler's a fantasy character Taika Waititi made up, which is very good. But Jojo Rabbit was an adaptation of a book, wasn't it? And if so, are you saying that in the book itself, like the little boy's fantasy Hitler isn't there, and that Taika put that himself? I don't know much about the actual like source material. Midnight Rendezvous, page 1, 1st of May, 1942. Manon, ma petite. Thank you for deciding to help us on our midnight raid. The ever-increasing Nazi presence in the city has made it more and more difficult for the resistance to get its hands on much-needed supplies. Acquiring this truck full of ammunition and explosives will no doubt strengthen our cause. Ho ho! Doing some Army of Shadow shit, gang. Thanks to the Vichy regime, Pétain's French police thugs, the Malays will be out in force. The Vichy regime? Is that French ice? I'm giving you a pistol and a few petrol bombs. Please be careful, sister. I'll meet you beneath the Eiffel Tower, and from there it's just a short path from the park to the academy, where supply trucks should be waiting. I have to admit, while I understand what the French resistance was and the part it played in the war, I'm an ignorant American pig and I'm not sure of the specifics of the actual thing, so this is cool to see as well. Also, I'm thinking this came out in 2000, right before 9/11. And I remember after 9/11, how quick we were to be so mean to the French. You know, the cheese-eating surrender monkeys stereotypes, the freedom fries bullshit, despite the French being the ones who resisted and the ones who gave us the Statue of Liberty and so much culture. And I mean, I think of de Tocqueville and the whole Louisiana Purchase, and just, there's so much French and there's so much Spanish in America that I think gets erased in the historical narrative by just like white British kind of ideas of what the history of the country looks like. Okay, I will start this level in a moment. I'm also seeing Mask, you're typing some messages. I'll be on that in just a second. I should be able to sit into the building, but I'll need you to provide cover fire while I'm working on the locks. Once we get to the truck, you open the garage door and we'll drive out into the countryside. If anything should go wrong, head to the underground catacombs. We have friends there who will keep you safe. Copy that. I do want to say, France, definitely one of the greatest cinematic producers of all time. One of the top 5 nations doing it. Shout out to France, shout out to Japan, shout out to America. shout out to Russia, shout out to Italy. I'm not going to put those in a particular order, but you know what? Them's my picks. Them's my picks. Them's peoples that knows movies, and there's a reason two of them are the Goofus and Galan of the Axis powers at one point. From the above, the buffoonist played by Waititi does not appear in Lorena's novel, nor does the imaginary formation. Though Johannes does feel disillusioned about the failure of the Third Reich and Hitler's suicide, he never fully sees the man for what he is, and thus never rejects him as he does in Jojo Rabbit. Holy shit, dude. Taika Waititi, what is your deal? Alright, we got a bit more color. We're in France, we're not out in the forest. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I got the controls down now. Played the whole previous game. I think I'm set. Let's see how long before I accidentally switch a weapon instead of reload, gang. But getting back to the Iron Dream and the crazy fascist power fantasy that it is, it's also a very squeaky clean one. I was thinking about that. I think even though he uses words like mongrel and mutant, stuff that we see as, you know, racist white nationalist dog whistles today, you know, he doesn't use any of the 7 words you can't say. He doesn't call things a fuck. Nobody's shitty or, you know, there's no cussing. There's some damns, maybe. There's absolutely no women, which I vaguely realized was going to be kind of the point when the bikers showed up, but he really commits to having no women in there as well. And it was bringing to mind sort of, I'm trying to draw a bigger point about what we don't see, which is the anti-Semitism. Like, the one thing that the novel is kind of like, we're not sure if this is fully actually anti-Semitic, is that part. They're like, the National Socialists were anti-Semitic, but because of our alternate history, we can't identify any political analog to who Hitler's mad at now. Which ties into a bigger thing the afterword mentions, which is, there was no World War II, I guess. Europe's just full communist now. That was a huge kind of bomb, I guess, that I really enjoyed the afterword dropping on me. I hadn't really thought through everything until earlier today. Because the fascism of Hitler's novel appeals not because it's anti-Semitic. All the anti-Semitism's hidden, all the racism is still trafficking in innuendo, but it is blatantly anti-communist. And it just makes me think of the concept of fascism as the religion of capitalism, of the market without the... It's the operating ideology of the market, trying to like itemize and reduce everything and kind of quantify it and dispose of the waste while making things more efficient. It's that. It's anti-communism in that sense. Some of the homoeroticism and the racism in Hitler's novel are still very much buried in fantasy innuendo, but he's very directly against communists and universalists. Those are very directly words used within Hitler's fantasy, and I find that very interesting. It makes me think of something we read a long-ass time ago when playing Umarengi Generation, which is William S. Burroughs' Naked Lunch. There was a bit of Naked Lunch we read where Burroughs talked about the sex that passes the censor.
Try to keep up.
Naked Lunch, of course, is also about just like ripping the mask off of the consumption engine and seeing what it's eating, like the naked lunch of it all. Oh, are there dudes coming? There are dudes coming. And so you see a lot of obscenity without it being very obscene within the Iron Dream is what I'm getting at. It's a clean, crisp, PG-13, you know, action-adventure movie. But boy, it's gonna fuck you up with some ideas about essentialist hero narratives, you know?
Get to the catacombs, Mano! It's a trap!
Oh, get to the catacombs, eh? Cool, whoa. Okay, I've been rambling about the Iron Dream, but I want to comment that this is much more curated. Like, I had to guide a dude and protect him while he was picking a lock, and then I just saw him crash a truck, and he's gone. Like, what a nice step up in presentation and production. But here's where there's an extra layer of interest to me with this whole what's said and not said with that afterword is like, so there's no World War II. Europe just became full communist. There's no actual nation state to map the kind of anti-Semitic paranoia that Hitler has within the Iron Dream, in the reality of the Iron Dream's world. But in our world, World War II does happen. And as a result of World War II, there is a nation state that does arise that in some interesting omitted ways, I guess. I just wonder if Spinrad was talking about Israel at all, or by omission, or like such a hyper obvious absence, making comment there. To be completely honest, I was digging around right before starting this stream, and I found a podcast that interviews Spinrad, so I'm gonna play that in a bit. But first, I kind of want to just barf out my thoughts, and once we got to a point where that got tiring, we could listen to it. But for now, we've completed our first mission. So Ja, thank you for commenting the other day. It had me thinking today. This is part of the method of techno-poverty. I already have the best viewers conflicting Thropioid DJZ7. All right, let's see what this Catacombs mission is like. Let's see if it's anything like the Catacombs mission from Fugitive Hunter. Also, the way the afterword so thoroughly considered multiple intersecting forces making the stupid and the hyper bad aspects of the novel actually appealing because of the socioeconomic climate. All right, Amongst the Dead, page 1. What is this, an Anthrax song? 1st of May, 1942. If you're reading this, your attempt to steal munitions did not go as planned. Jacques was always rather impetuous, inclined to trust, and now it seems that the Gestapo are onto us. Our group, Combat, has been using the catacombs to move personnel and supplies, and now we soldiers of the night must evacuate. Fortunately, we have planned for our eventual discovery. With this note, you will find several detonators and a STIN submachine gun. The STIN ammo should be compatible with the MP-3008 weapons that the Germans will be using. The Gestapo and the Vichy's Malay brutes have been coming through the crawl spaces that connect to the streets above. Each entrance is above the main level of the catacombs, and moonlight will be visible through them. Ja, is the JPEG moon gonna be back? We've explosives placed ready to do the work. Detonate them by pressing the action button at the spots marked with red in the boxes stand clear, of course. Always pressing the damned action button. We also need you to secure some forged papers hidden behind the crawl space marked with this resistance symbol. Then sneak through the sarcophagus room to find an exit leading to a mortuary where an ex-collaborator awaits burial outside Paris. Take his place in the hearse, and on one of our agents will get you to the Saint Marie de Champs, where you should be safe until the heat dies down. Man, I guess I always thought about the nation being primary and capitalism sort of bubbling up from within the impulse of the nation structure to expand and dominate. I think the concept of nation, Elman, as industrial imperialism arises, is the legal body which then gives definition and permission to the corporate body. Somehow Clipmoon's returned. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, Elman, but like, Think about how, for instance, a corporation is a person. Why is a corporation a person? Well, because legally, that's how we're told they are. I always think about this when I think about the movie Alphaville, but World War II, if you frame it less as an idea of like fascism versus anti-fascism, the forces of fascism versus the forces of communism, it was less that sort of binary fight and more a fight between whether fascists were going to dress up in a military outfit or a business outfit. And I think we've seen kind of like the global economic order reshaped into a, fascist order. What do you expect? If you've been here long enough, if you're here on a Tuesday seeing our special secret stream, you know what I think on this. All right, I just remember the first game had a catacombs level as well. Also, just thinking now at the complete absence of females and the complete knowledge that Hitler had syphilis and was riding in like a frenzied syphilitic state, it really makes me realize how much of the fluid fixation was just, yeah, the good stuff. That's bad prose telling a good story is what I would describe this novel as, and it's been a joy reading this book. It's been a genuine joy. Like this and Narcissus and Goldmund have been really great finds from the Technopoverty project. I also must tell you that The Iron Dream is only like 240 pages. Once again, our upcoming program for summer is going to be the Summer Scramble. I keep renaming it different things. The Shorts of Summer, the Slacker Summer, etc., but it's going to be the Summer Scramble. I was considering the Summer Shuffle, but I was like, no, Scramble, like eggs. The Summer Scramble is going to be a lot of very short, sub-200 page books or short stories. So we're gonna just throw a lot of stuff in the blender and play that alongside a bunch of new and contemporary games. I'm aiming for the games and movies to all be stuff I've been wanting to play or see that have been released from 2020 onwards. So we're gonna try to get a grab bag of newer indie video games, big release video games, movies of all shapes and sizes, stuff from this decade so we don't feel like doomer nostalgists. While we do that, we're going to be shotgunning a lot of short stories, folks. It's going to be a fun summer, so hang around for that scramble. Is this the same map, actually, from the first game? Yes, Mask for Mask, speaking my exact politics derived specifically from my brain. Are my LLCs 3/5 of a person? God damn, Jaw, that's a deep one. Good pool, man. Fuck. Yeah, a corporation's what? Damn, a 3/5 compromise on corporate entities? Fuck. Gang, if you want to know what the Founding Fathers' thoughts on slavery and like the rights of non-whites were, just look up the 3/5 Compromise, please. That was written law in the American Constitution, and it's fucked up. Nice. I feel like I turned some corners fast and missed some stuff back here. Let's see. There's like an upward arch zone. Oh yeah, look at all this. I should probably be using my SMG, but I'm in survival mode. Yeah, I didn't come through here, right? I didn't go up this way. Oh. Sir, stop. Reload and action button are still the same. I don't know how I feel about that, although I'm used to it by now. Once again, excellent score. It's a shinier version of the first game so far. I haven't touched anything as far as difficulty switches go. The enemies feel a bit easier. There's more of them, but they're easier. But like that also gives you a nicer rhythm, I think. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. It's only the second mission. I do wonder if there's going to be anything like the, oh, here's that crawl space. Like the sneaking missions in the first game. That felt very of that release. Cool, cool, cool. I just gotta keep sealing entrances. Note that there's health back here. You hear more ET? I already feel like they're going for a more emotional twang. Like Manon already lost her partner. They kind of directly address you by name. There's like, the first game did have like an assumed protagonist role you were feeling. Like there were some characteristics assigned to the dude you were playing. But like it was left blank slate enough to just be a general like good guy American. I feel they're selling Manon as a character in a series of events like much harder already, just through the score. I mean, that truck crash was really impressive. Oh man, yeah, that distinction of holding truth to be self-evident says a lot when you start noticing how legal concepts get built on legal fantasy. Exactly. Oh man, I think about this right now with, in Texas, there's smoke shops that sell THCA, and there was a ban that was going to be imposed so that they can no longer sell THCA, but then that ban got a restraining order placed on it, and right now there's just been a lot of back and forth of that nature and pushbacks continually of like when stores can or cannot stop selling, and this is very fascinating to me because typically, I'm used to this kind of government interest agents to be like for school funding or for welfare funding or for like, you know, something that directly is like a bleeding heart lib sort of thing. But this is an ordinance that regulates what businesses can and can't do. Like this is directly like commerce related. This isn't like bleeding heart liberals like trying to get welfare spending passed. This is just an ordinance saying a business can sell X, Y, and Z in places, you know, A, B, and C. And the way this is being treated, like, you know, not showing up for a parking ticket where it just gets shuffled along down the line, it really makes me question, like, if it's this blatant and obvious to me how non-real the law is, what insanity does that drive in someone who may not really consider these concepts and until, you know, right now they've assumed the laws are solid and fixed and normative, but then suddenly it's like, wait, no one's enforcing anything, what's going on? I think this is why we're seeing, you know, a lot of crackpot centrists. Again, people looking into like leftism, communism, socialism, even just like the escapism of their hobbies are looking for ways to get out of doing things violently, whereas like the people who've like been so narrow-minded in their scope of what's pragmatic and real in American politics like are going to feel the pot boil faster because they are in a smaller pot because they haven't been expanding their imagination on like what they can do or think about the situation. And I mean, we're the cowboy culture, John Wayne and Clint Eastwood and first-person shooters. I mean, we have fucking Halo montages in our fucking military propaganda. This ties back into something I remember talking about way at the start of the stream when playing Mega Man X with the lightsaber. you know, there's that American liberal fantasy of projecting yourself in as some sort of Star Wars analog, and the problem with Star Wars is you're waiting to be handed a lightsaber so that then you can go fight the Sith. It's kind of like when you're like, oh, I thought, you know, we were Indiana Jones. It's like, well, you're waiting for those narratives to take form, and those narratives require the existence of fascists. So, in a way, you're permitting fascists to exist. You may not realize it, but like you're birthing them for the sake of your own like self-fulfillment fantasies about like when they pop up, you're gonna get to shoot them with the lightsaber or crack them with the Indiana Jones whip. Yeah, this is straight up just from the first game, but maybe I'm just familiar with the geometry. Maybe the enemy AI is just different. They started using Claude instead of ChatGPT. They seem more manageable. Maybe Steven Spielberg just said the first game was too hard. I do wonder to what extent he played it in the testing phase and had any say in that sort of side of the project, because it's amazing to both Jacob and myself how much there was no difficulty switch in Medal of Honor 1. And it was difficult, but it was manageable. Oops. Jaw, I will check your comment in just a bit. Are they just coming infinite spawning? They're just coming infinitely? Oh, geez. Oh, God. I guess so. I'm just gonna move on. Oh, did I get all the entrances? Cool, 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 cool. Maybe I can just exit then. If I remember right, the catacombs in the first game had dogs though, so it's nice that I'm not shooting dogs here. That's great, actually. Big dubs, big dubs. Alright, I haven't been using my machine gun at all. Oh yeah, can I still shoot through corners? Is this the exit? Oh yeah, get in the coffin. Get in the coffin, Shinji. Jaw says the House passed the 226 Farm Bill, which attempts to close the hemp loophole, not because hemp-derived products are dangerous, but because the wrong companies are making money. Gotcha, Jaw. Yeah, I know there's been a few states, like I remember in Ohio at one point they shot down legalization because what was going to happen is it was going to be passed in a way where only like legacy alcohol licensors, they got like first serve like licensing or something like that so that they can kind of monopolize the sales and weed out competition before it ever starts. Oh man, it's so apparent the legislation is often crafted by people who have an economic system in mind that only works for how they say it does if everybody always has a little more money. Also, a thing to keep in mind is the people who can afford to send lobbyists and like catch the attention and dominate the attention of our congressional people are those with money. Oh, I am slipping on those grind shots. You're right, Al, man. But yeah, whenever I would try to explain the Iron Dream to someone, one thing that would come up because of the whole like, oh yeah, Hitler just migrated to America, it's like, did World War II happen? Which I didn't know until that last part there. And I wonder to what extent too, Whipple, the historian writing the afterword, I wonder how skeptical I'm supposed to be of him because, I mean, full communist Europe sounds pretty cool, don't you think? Without a Trace, page 1, 10th of May, 1942. Welcome to St. Marie de Champs, Manon. My name is Fabrice Delacroix. It seems your trouble continues to hound you. A panzer unit surrounded the village, and they've brought some late with them. They're conducting a house-to-house search for members of combat resistance groups. These fuckers. The village is a major center for the printing and distribution of our group's underground newspaper. Tight. I'm somewhat of a zines guy myself. We need to get several key members out of town before they're either located or outright denounced by those they call friends. To slow the search, locate 3 World War I surplus Hochkitz machine guns we've hidden throughout the village and use them to disrupt a Malaysian Panzer Grenadier. Use action to open the crates and action again to operate the guns. Nice. We must protect the businesses that are helping to print and distribute the paper. Find and destroy the bundled papers at 3 locations around town. Again, this is teaching kids in that edutainment sense that, the French resistance, like people were printing papers, writing pamphlets, like getting information out there, smuggling shit. A local butcher's been using his trucks to get the paper to surrounding towns. See if the Malaysians have discovered the trucks. If so, eliminate the collaborating cowards and destroy the compromised vehicles, however valuable they may be. Finally, find and hide the printing press. Camouflage has been set up. You only need to activate it. Many lives are depending on you, Manon. Bon chance. I will get more cock shots this time, L-Man. I promise. And at some point, I promise we will be listening to SPINRAD himself talk. I found an interview. I found an obscure podcast up on YouTube. I was just searching on YouTube to see if there are any essays or reviews or interviews with SPINRAD himself on the novel. I found a podcast from a few years ago. You'll see what it's called when I get to it. I'll give you all the info. I'll link it in the chat. But they talk with. There's an interview with SPINRAD just up there on YouTube. I will play it back and we will see what it's all about. I'm kind of curious what he has to say because it seems like it's a podcast. It's a podcast, so clearly it's something that was recorded after the year 2000. And considering the book was written in the 70s, I'm assuming SPINRAD basically is going to be very old. And it's quite some time has passed since he first wrote the book. I'm wondering what his reflections are going to be given that distance of time. Door can't be open. This door can be open. Cool. Blowing up that evidence. This is a repurposed level as well, isn't it? I feel like I'm working backwards. Trucks compromised, destroy them. Yeah, because this plaza's the same. I don't even hate that because, duh, of course you're going to go to the same places in the real world. Ooh, I like this score. I'm getting a Castlevania Circle of Darkness vibe from that. And what I mean is Castlevania Circle of Darkness is like, it's the same deal where it's taking Castlevania 64's assets and just remixing them into a slightly different game. but that slightly different game is much cooler and more sophisticated than the base game. I feel that's what we're getting here. Like, you get to be a cool French lady killing Nazis, and I don't know, the combat feels tweaked to be a bit nicer, if that makes sense. Notice how much I'm not taking damage. Like they're way less accurate. I was getting eaten alive a lot of the time. Medal of Honor 1. Maybe I'm just moving with more confidence as well. Oh, ow, 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 ow. Did I get stuck on something? What was that? Oh, cool, my pistol's back. Let's get this health, and I think there's some mollies over here. Yep. Petrol bombs, they call them, eh? What all do I got? Cool, cool, cool. Should I, oh, I think I'm gonna have to go down the thing, gang. Another reason I think that by omission, Spinrad saying something about Israel is because Zind just is so close to Zion in my mind. The ZI kickoff, and what he's obviously pointing towards anti-Semitism with the Dominators being shortened to the Doms and what is said in the afterword. So I think, yeah, there is some sort of Israel by absence thing going on with the fact that World War II never happened. Because I think part of the thing is, with fascism, is like, yes, it is racist, yes, it does do the hatred stuff, but it does that as a post-excuse. Like, that stuff comes up after it's already made it, after you've already invited the vampire in. The way the vampire gets into the door is more the economic, anti-communist, the stuff that's permitted to pass the censor, as Burroughs would say. This is kind of a thing with Trump, I think, is Trump is just the subtext of the GOP's project of the past 50 years made text, right? Which is why once he secured power, as, you know, he secured the seat of the presidency, he was able to just go mask off and be like, no, everything, like, we're not so innocent either, or whatever he said when asked about, like, Soleimani. The admission that, like, yeah, no, nobody actually cares. Which, not true, people care, but I think what he's doing is he's giving permission to a sort of white apathy, of course. Which then after the fact, once that's established, they can be like, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, everything's bad and awful. I need to hide the printing press. Where's the printing press? I haven't seen a printing press. I feel like I'm nearing the end of a level. I don't think it would make a difference, but I would really love a silenced weapon just to feel more stealthy or stealth capable. Cool. Is that all the evidence? Oh, okay. Got it. Cool. Yeah, breezy, cheesy missions. All right, let's see. I appreciate, oh, wait. Let me scroll up the chat a bit. Continuing with his thought, all people are not equal in the American Republic. Cops can kill and walk due to qualified immunity. Same for presidents to break the law of no punishment, while all force place privilege for frivolous lawsuits. Yep. I appreciate the color writing in the pictures versus the Force game, as well as the more dynamic lighting. Yeah, Ja, I'm like these. It's brighter. It's nicer looking. The weird thing is how people will be like, the Constitution tried this fundamental set of values, but it's like, oh, but that's not realistic. We still need Batman to go outside the law to cover the gap between law and order. We need to find the printing press. They're saying bad things about me. Yeah, oh man, that's the thing too, because like people think of like the Constitution, or like there's a very libertarian pocket Constitution mode of thought where it's like, oh, I just need to know the fundamentals of like the Constitution, even though they don't know those at the base level, because the necessary and proper clause and the clause that permits Congress to regulate interstate commerce, the Commerce Clause as it's called, a lot of those powers are so rubber bandy as to justify or permit Congress to do stuff like nationalize healthcare, nationalize certain industries, you know, regulate interstate commerce as it will. I believe this is also how like a federal income tax was justified at some point, which again, if you're a libertarian or small government minded person, you're going to hate that. But what I'm getting at is beyond the Constitution, we have contested like legal history and bodies of work on cases, you know, funneling their way through the judiciary, and you know, there's all kinds of just rumination from the judiciary and from judges and from Supreme Court justices. Just there's more than just the Constitution. There's been several issues of continuity published since then. There's a lot more lore than people realize with the American law, because they think they trace it to something in the Constitution, but it's like, okay, but then in 1880 such it was challenged, in 1880 something it was challenged, in 19 something it was challenged, and that's why today we still don't have such and such. This is a point I think both Legion Miller and Legal Eagle are very good at illustrating through just like the practical content they put out on these processes. Tread carefully, page 1, 10th of May, 1942. Our printing operation is safe. Now it's vital you delay the Panther column from leaving the village. As we speak, the luckiest of our key personnel are escaping the village by car or truck, the rest by bicycle or on foot. Check out 99% Invisible's Constitution breakdown. I've learned a lot from it. Okay. Noted. By destroying enough tanks, you may slow them long enough to help save the lives of some of our most dedicated people. I do need to go back and look at the Constitution. I did just have a government professor in college who was very good at just like breaking it down, where I remember picking up a lot, like learning about the Commerce Clause, of course. No, there is like, this is something about nostalgia you have to be careful about too. Like, you do need to go back and reread things and re-update what you perceived or thought about things. And you need to rethink about how something you learned in elementary school, high school, middle school, if you learned something in a public institution or such years ago, you have to consider that potentially that public institution is no longer operating in that manner. People don't know the same things you do. People aren't uniformly educated in the same way state by state. I think that's a big trap of growing old, is like people get very bitter or reactionary in the sense that they're too shocked by like what the kids aren't learning, instead of seeing it as an opportunity to pass something on to the kids. It's not easy for a single soldier to stop a tank, but by using your superior mobility, you have a much better chance. Keep clear of the front of the tanks. In addition to the cannon of their turret, they have a forward-firing machine gun. Oh shit, tanks. If you keep moving, the tank's gunner should have a difficult time getting a lock on you. High explosives are the key Panzerfaust in particular. They're heavy, so the Germans tend to leave them lying around. Am I going to get an RPG super early this time around? Petrol bombs are less effective, but with enough use, still get the job done. If all else fails, you can use small arms fire, but it takes a large quantity of lucky shots or mounted machine gun to get the job done. Alright, avoid tanks. I mean, what I'm talking about here too, with the whole like passing something down instead of just getting resentful and bitter about it, is to circle back to the start of the Toy Soldiers of Spring, what Solid Snake was getting at with the memetics versus genetics stuff in Metal Gear Solid 2. There are ways beyond the biological we pass down human processes. Conscript got me thinking I could break that barrel open. For those of you who may not have seen the game Conscript yesterday, I highly suggest coming back Thursday. We'll be continuing Conscript while reading All Quiet on the Western Front. It's a very delightful hybrid of Resident Evil and Dark Souls mechanics set in a World War I trench battlefield. Very scary what it's doing with the no man's land. Alright, what's up? What's around? Oh, here we go. Phew. Okay, cool. I was worried it was going to get a shot off on me. I felt like a sitting duck. Shit. Oh, is this just doing that thing I liked in the first game where the third act or the last act of a level is like a big open-ended, just like take out 3 or 4 things? Do I just have to take out tanks? You know what? It's nighttime. I should be looking at the moon, Ja. It's there, and it's also clipped. Oh shit. Okay, now enemies are getting meaner. I like it. Where's the tank? Where's the tank? Doom, 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 doom. Yeah, it's more like a pumping. Oh, here we go, here we go. Nice. All right, two more? Two more, cool. Look at this cityscape though, this looks so good. Oh, is somebody shooting? Oh shit, what the? Can I blow up his top? They got ambitious with this level. There's been some noticeable frame rate dropping because of the sheer amount of dudes they've been throwing up here. But also there's a tank. Also tanks, like big moving tanks. Shit. Nice. Nice. Oh shit, 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 shit. Nice. That's it for the tanks. Let's reload and get some health. Cool, I think I just have to clear out. I just have to take out the trash. Yeah, there's the exit gate. Cool, we're done here. I could have saved Private Ryan all on my own, that's true.
In direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany spent the 1930s rebuilding their military into a massive fighting force that Hitler planned to use in his conquest of Europe. In response, the French government poured their resources into the Maginot Line, a massive self-contained fortification that ran the entire length of their eastern border.
Nice.
Unfortunately, the Maginot Line turned out to be one of the greatest miscalculations of modern military history. Germany's Luftwaffe simply flew over it. France's formal surrender was finalized in just a matter of weeks.
Oof. See, maybe it's just me being less knowledgeable on this side of the conflict, but like I'm already a bit more gripped by the actual narrative of the thing too. They're getting me. We got some secret codes. Let's save. All right, I need to read some of this chat really quick. Elman says there's a class distinction how some treat the law as a thing that defines reliable boundaries, and some are like, get a good enough lord and they'll figure out how to keep what you stole. Yes, Elman, huge thing. Also, the idea of like, don't conflate what is moral with what is legal, and what is legal with what is, like, what is moral, what is legal, what is ethical, those are like three different things. Like, moral is the good, evil, right, wrong, personal compass stuff. Ethical is more about consistency and like, is there a standard code that makes sense that is being adhered to? What is legal is like, what will power kill you for, or what does the boss man say you can't do? Those are three distinct categories, and I think they get intentionally obscured and obfuscated and made into, you know, three things, into one perception that really drives Americans crazy, intentionally so. This makes me think of Neighbors and just the way they understand it's a matter of just pressing the boundary, just pushing the boundary at the property line. I don't know, after a point I watch something like Neighbors and I see all these people who are like 50 plus who are in this state of neurosis, and I'm like, is that just because America kills off all the underclass and leftist types who don't make it to that far. A bit grim to think, sure, but I just wonder, what is the purpose of this nation? What is the purpose of, what's the teleology of this whole goddamn thing, you know? And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and take a break before we start the next mission. I'm gonna stand up, stretch, rehydrate, be kind to myself. Y'all should do the same for yourself. We'll be back in a few minutes and I'll fire up that pod. We're gonna listen to what Norman Spinrad himself has to say in the interview regarding the Iron Dream when we get back. I'll see y'all soon. All right, so Jaw says, if you are asked to identify themes that carry through this season of Technopoverty, are there any that stand out and could be used for analysis in the next season? Or do you conceive of seasons as more self-contained? I shouted you out on Birds' Patreon, the culture is dead vid, and it got me thinking about the format of your streams. I'd say the seasons are self-contained, but you will find me, just by the nature of stringing it all together, making some sort of narrative out of it, because, I mean, that's how you cohere into, like, being, I guess, or, you know, that's how a person perceives their reality and tries to make sense of it in a way. I'm not saying I'm forcing connections here, but, like, I just like to see what bounces off of each other. Yeah, I don't know, going forward, I think something I just surprised myself recently with was, you know, just thinking back about the strand of outlaw books we read back while playing JSRF, back when I hadn't really figured the format of the channel out. I'm in a much better paced mode now, where it's a single book that we walk through several sessions and stuff, trying to do, like, multiple books associated with a game, all kind of shock and blasted at the same time. But the naked lunch idea, I think there's this idea I'm trying to do throughout this whole thing, and this gets back to both Naked Lunch and Walter Benjamin's The Work of Art, The Age of Its Mechanical Reproduction, which is, I'm trying to maybe poke at or challenge the perception of what the distance between art and audience is, in the way that Benjamin talks about fascism aestheticizing and building distance between the art object and the person, the way that gap sort of mystifies things. I'm looking to do the opposite of that, which is why there's such a casual sense to the pace we take with the games here, a casual way we chat about the books. A big part of this is also talking about, you know, I have a co-host here with me. We'll consider what we're doing beyond the screen or share the game in a way that may not be just a singular solipsist dude speedrunning a video game type mode. Yeah, L-Man, you have a good night. The seasons really are just what my mood is feeling, kind of on an intuitive level. Like, for instance, this next block, I really just was like, oh yeah, there's a few, like, games from this year in, like, 2025 I've been wanting to play. And the way my schedule pans out is Technopoverty is the only time I'm really playing video games these days. So while I enjoy deep diving into, like, retro stuff and revisiting stuff and tearing it apart, peeling it apart with books I've never read, I do also want to play the new stuff. My own personal quest for curiosity, I guess, is the only really connecting thing beyond that. But in that there's a faith that I don't know. I have a faith in the project in the sense that, like, through exploring books, through exploring games, this isn't going to solve all the world's problems, but it is a nice respite 2 times a week. And it does help me stay normal with my reading and just catching back up with folks. It's nice to check in with y'all twice a week. I think that prevents it from being too online. If I keep it to 2 to 3 times a week, I don't know if this is something I'd want to do every day per se. Although if I was doing it every day, I'd probably be having much more variety or much more deeper dives on what we're doing here. Plus, of course, the dream would then be that, like, I'm no longer doing wage labor because I'm doing techno-poverty labor. But that would be its own curse. This is my ramble to say that the seasons are self-contained, but there's an overarching curiosity with what have we been gawking at all these years? This is something I think about when I talk about, when I keep making these recurrent connections. It's not that I'm like surprised that Naked Lunch in some ways is talking about the same things about the Iron Dream. It's that like, what does it mean that we keep observing certain political modes or ideological modes recurrent throughout history, and that we have the means of making art that articulates and warns us about it, but they still sort of flourish up? What is that tension? What is that? I'm not sure if that really leads anywhere, but to just kind of try to make cogent this whole thing, yeah, my curiosity is the guiding thing. I do think Walter Benjamin's The Work of Art, The Age of Mechanical Reproduction is a huge guiding idea going on here. I do talk about Milton's Paradise Lost a lot because I think that instructs how I lens a lot of the English canon and just like ideas about morality, philosophy, and Christianity. Going into the summer season, I'd say let's keep an eye on protagonist syndrome. That seems to be a recurrent idea I'm always poking at, whether we're talking about Doom, Jet Set Radio Future, Death Stranding, Metal Gear Solid, Medal of Honor. The Western fetishization of individualist hero protagonism. This is something that even in SPINRAD'S Postscript in the Iron Dream, he's pointing out as a force that makes people who otherwise would call something dumb succumb to power fantasy. All right. Ja, let me know if that worked for you, if that was coherent, incoherent. I kind of was like, I think I have this answer off the cuff. Then I realized, no, I'm just vibing, but hopefully something came of that. Let's listen to Norman Spinrad himself. Let's see what we got here.
The left is always inclined to look on the grim side of things. Always inclined to look on the grim side of things. The cup is always half empty. Until you point out, look, it's half full. It doesn't look so bad.
Let me know if too loud.
Welcome to Political Gingivitis, the crazy and zany podcast for progressives who need a laugh. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Andrew Stewart, and this week we're going to try to put a smile on your face and maybe a few thoughts in your head.
Ja, another key text I would say is the Fredric Jameson, just the postmodernism in the one we read for the Metal Gear Solid 2. I'm interested in media. That's what my whole thing's always been, basically, an artifice in the sense of like, what are we doing with media if not mediating messages to each other? Like, are we playing with ourselves? What does that say about the human animal when we do that activity? These are questions I don't have answers to, which is also why they poke at me and make the back of my head itch and make me want to do things like this, just to see what's out there when I start bouncing things off each other. All right, let's throw this podcast on.
Hello again there, folks. My name's Andrew Stewart. I'm your hostess with the mostest, and I welcome you again to Political Gingivitis, the zany and crazy podcast for progressives who need a laugh. We're
Gonna listen to this OSS briefing real quick.
To be honest, we've been looking for you. We just didn't know it. Now, I'm sorry to be crass, but while we've been aware of your brother Jacques for some time, we had never heard of Manon Baptiste until you made contact with our station.
Oh, is this Manon Origins?
We knew your brother occasionally worked with another resistance member. I'm just sorry to say that I assumed it was another man. He was wise to keep your identity a secret. I've seen several good operatives denounced by people they thought they could trust. With both your anonymity and your brother gone, You could have easily opted to return to a quiet civilian life. You could have even collaborated. Turning over those papers you collected to the Gestapo would have earned you a lot of special privileges under the German authority. Instead, you committed yourself to a life on the run, away from everyone and everything you've ever known.
You know what? This is like effective comic book
From the looks of your teaching
protagonist
degree, You and
creation.
your brother found yourselves in some pretty hairy situations during the early days of the occupation.
Like Manon
That's
is Lady
exactly
Indiana
that kind of
Jones is kind of
experience
cool.
We need to employ if our
Look at
intelligence
that.
operations are to stand a chance.
I don't think you ever
We're
saw the
preparing
dude's
to
face
launch a
in
major
Medal of Honor,
assault in
right?
North Africa very soon. Unfortunately, all the men we've sent out to do reconnaissance have had their covers blown. Now,
But a
as
woman.
serendipity would have it, we've learned that a Vichy propaganda magazine has sent a female correspondent all the way to Casablanca to profile the brave men of the Africa Corps. We want you to intercept this woman and take her place. It should provide the ideal cover for getting in there and seeing what Rommel is up to. And if the opportunity presents itself, we want you to take action to disrupt his operations. If successful, your exfiltration will be by airplane, specifically in an old Northrop Alpha that's perfectly suited for this kind of special operation. The pilot is a lieutenant in the Air Transport Command who's been given strict orders not to even look at you, as we don't want to compromise your identity in any way. You'll be briefed on the rest of the specifics during your transit to the African continent. It's a privilege for the OSS that you want to join our ranks. Be careful and good luck. I'll see you when you get back.
That's right, a ghost bro. I'm a girl and I do spy work too. I can James Bond just like the best of them. Oh, a different type of note. No, but it is effective at building a character through just like narration. This is already much more sophisticated a story than Medal of Honor 1, which was, you know, a showcase of this was World War II in color. Hello, Manon. My name's Captain Ted Aubrick. I was part of the original OSS office in Washington and just been assigned to your control. Do any Call of Duty games do like the ladies can murder too thing? Can you be an operator girly in any of the Call of Duty games, any of the Modern Warfares? I must say, it's always been exciting to watch our ranks grow with brave, honorable individuals such as you. How are things in sunny Africa? You're to be meeting a local operative, but unfortunately has since been discovered. The mission now rests solely on you. Local Nazi agents are searching for your hotel, and they brought troops from Africa Corps with them. Escape the hotel and find your way to our operative's house. There you'll find a dossier on the logistics officer who's been shipping supplies to a secret base in the desert to the west. Use this dossier to locate the officer's house. You will find the location of the Africa Corps supply base there. With the location of the depot in hand, infiltrate the supply convoy, quietly hitch a ride to the location. Things can be rough and falling apart, but if acting devices will help it, Operation Torch complete success. Find the operative's house and obtain the dossier. Then find the location of the supply depot, get yourself out of town. Get to it, Manon. Got my work cut out for me. Sure sounds like it, Doc. All right.
We'll be changing up the format a little bit today with starting out. I'm going to be sharing with you an interview with science fiction author Norman Spinrad. He is originally born in the United States but currently living in Paris, and we're discussing a novel he wrote 40 plus years ago, titled The Iron Dream. Or to be more precise, Norman Spinrad presents The Iron Dream, Adolf Hitler's Hugo Award-winning science fiction classic, with an afterword by Homer Whipple. So, this is a very astounding book. It's essentially a postmodern science fiction pulp novel. It presents us with the supposition that after one, Adolf Hitler, rather than journeying into politics, instead emigrated to the United States and became engaged in the pulp science fiction movement of the 1920s and 1930s. I'm going to start off
Thank you, a ghost bro.
A excerpt from an essay that was written for the academic journal Science Fiction Studies by the late Ursula K. Le Guin.
Hell yeah.
She writes, Adolf Hitler's Hugo-winning novel of 1954, Lord of the Swastika, presented by Norman Spinrad as The Iron Dream, is an extraordinary book. perhaps it deserves the 1973 Hugo as well. On the back cover, Michael Moorcock compares the book with the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton, and Sir Oswald Mosley. It is the very quintessence of sword and sorcery. End of quote. None of the authors mentioned is relevant, except of course Mosley. But the reference to sword and sorcery is exact. The Iron Dream can be read as a tremendous parody of the subgenre represented by Moorcock's own Runestaff saga and by the Conan the Barbarian books and Brack the Barbarian and those gore books and so on. Quote-unquote heroic fantasy on the sub-basement level, the writing of which seems to be motivated by a mixture of simple-minded escapism and money-minded cynicism. Taken as a parody of sword and sorcery, the book hits all its targets. There is the hero, the alpha male with his muscles of steel and his clear eyes and his manifest destiny. There are the hero's friends. There are the vile, subhuman enemies. There is the hero's sword, in this case, a truncheon of interesting construction. There are the tests, quests, battles, victories, culminating in a final supernatural super victory of the Superman. There are no women at all, no dirty words, no sex of any kind. The book is a flawless example of clean obscenity. It'll pass any censor.
Oh shit.
Except the one that sits within the soul.
Hell yeah, Ursula. Ja, I was pausing that. Oh shit. Okay. So I was pausing to address your comment, Ja, but Ursula was just saying right there. Yeah, it's the censor that it's the sex that gets through the censor. Holy shit. Okay. Fuck. First truncheon of today's stream. Correct. What you say, I would agree that multi-word media is a good word to include. I was just also going to bring up, so I brought up Paradise Lost earlier, and within Paradise Lost, I did lay out basically a thesis of Satanism as nostalgia, or the nostalgic satanic. I do think that's a guiding thing. If the Doom chapter taught me anything, if you go back and you watch the old stuff on the channel, I feel during the summer of Doom, when I started playing a lot of Doom WODs with Jacob, we culminated that by playing Doom Eternal with Paradise Lost, and that's where it really clicked for me how to pace out what to do with the channel. But also in revisiting Paradise Lost, it did bring to mind kind of like what I find satanic about the concept of nostalgia, and something that I think fascism preys on is that sort of nostalgia. So that might be something to take forward. Nostalgia and individualism, those two things are going to carry forward into our summer scramble, because the summer scramble, unlike the cowboy country, unlike the fall into the future, unlike Hot Timber, it's going to be less organized. Although I do think Hot Timber is just going to be a standard thing, or these seasonal categories may become standardized. We'll see. Either way, the nostalgia stuff and the individualism stuff, keep that in mind as we go forward, is what I'm saying.
A parody of sword and sorcery, however, is self-doomed. You cannot exaggerate what is already witlessly exaggerated. You cannot distort for comic effect something that is already distorted out of all reality. All Spinrad can do is equal the crassest kind of sword and sorcery. No one could surpass it, but fortunately, he has a larger game in mind. There is another kind of book of which this can be said to be a parody or of oblique criticism, and it is the straight science fiction adventure yarn, as it is called in manly modest disclaimer of its having any highfalutin philosophical, intellectual message, though, and in fact, it usually contains a strong dose of concentrated ideology. This is the kind of story best exemplified by Robert Heinlein, who believes in the alpha male, in the role of the innately, genetically superior man, in the heroic virtues of militarism, in the desirability and necessity of authoritarian control, etc., and who is a very persuasive arguer for all these things. Here, the Iron Dream may have an effect as a moral counterweight. For in reading it, reading all the familiar things about the glory of battle, the foulness of enemies of truth, the joys of obedience to a true leader, the reader is forced to remember that it is Hitler saying these things, and thus to question what is said over and over.
Is this ideology
The
from
tension and
Concentrate?
discomfort thus set up may prove salutary to people who are used to swallowing the stuff whole. And of course, the book is not merely satirizing the machismo of certain literary genres, but the whole authoritarian bag. It is, like all SPINRAD's serious work, a moral statement. The beauty of the thing is the idea of it, a novel by an obscure hack named Hitler. The danger, the risk of it, is that the idea is embodied in 255 pages of inevitably third-rate prose. This may not bother SPINRAD. There are obvious parodic elements in the style, which is prudish, slightly stiff, and full of locutions such as not but. But in fact, the style is seldom very much worse than SPINRAD's own, before Hitlerization. Since he is one of the very best short story writers in science fiction.
Yeah, Ja, you can't
perhaps
distort.
the
You're
best,
told exactly
I
it.
doubted my own instinct here and checked back with the stories in the collection.
That is something I just want to comment on real quick, is I'm glad not only did that afterward go like, yes, I was making gay puns, yes, everything you thought was like you had questions about subtextually is being answered. It then went a step further by going like, the question isn't, was I intentional or not with that as an author? The question is, was Hitler as a character being cynical or sincere? And then from there, the way that rockets into just like exploring like, under what conditions Hitler would be cynical, under what conditions it would be sincere, and how that is a reflection of the greater world of the Iron Dream, once again, in which Europe has gone full communist. Like, it was such a mind-bending way for just like 10 pages at the end to shift the meaning of everything.
The Last Hurrah of the Golden Horde, published in 1970 by Avon. Vivid, imaginative, and powerful, the stories make their impact through their ideas and despite their prose. They are mostly written on about the level of this sentence from One More with Feeling. Quote, there was an expectant tension in her voice that he couldn't fathom, but rippled the flesh of his thighs. Like most prose described as punchy, gutsy, hard-hitting, SPINRAD's actually a highly over-intellectualized style. Nobody who responds sensually and perceptually to the sound and meaning of words could write or can read that sentence with satisfaction. How do you fathom a tension? With a plumb line? How does her tension ripple his thighs? Does it make little waves like the grass in the wind or the sky? Or little ridges on a washboard? Of course one isn't expected to ask such questions. One isn't supposed to react to the false concreteness of the verbs, except in the most generalized and funny way, just as with political slogans and bureaucratines. What SPINRAD is after is an idea, a moral idea, of the world of emotions and sensations. Nothing exists but a vague atmosphere of charged violence, through which the reader is hurled forward, breakneck, towards the goal. To read a SPINRAD short story is to be driven at top speed across the salt flats in a race car. It's a powerful car, and he's a great driver. He leaves the other racers way behind. But
He
a
did know
novel
how
as
to
a
describe a
racer
motorcycle chase.
is much more like a caramel caravan, an ocean liner, or a Graf Zeppelin. It is by essence large, long, slow, intricate, messy, and liable to get where it is going by following a great circle. Variety of pace, variety of tone and mood, and above all, complexity of subject are absolutely essential to the novel. I don't think SPINRAD has forced that yet. His 3 long books are overextended short stories, and they have been relative failures because you do not make a novel by just stretching out the story. But in this case, does it matter? How can a novel by Adolf Hitler be well written complex interesting? Of course it can't. It would spoil the bare joke. On the other hand, why should one read a book that isn't interesting? A short story, yes. Even a book of 100 pages or 120. Only the high points matter. Only they support the tension. He has done in The Iron Dream something as outrageous as what Borges talks about in doing in Pierre Menard, his rewriting of Don Quixote word for word by a 20th century Frenchman. He has attempted a staggeringly bold act of forced extreme distancing. And distancing, the pulling back from reality in order to see it better, is perhaps the essential gesture of science fiction. It is by distancing that science fiction achieves aesthetic joy, tragic tension, moral cogency. It is the latter that Spinrad aims for and achieves. We are forced, insofar as we can continue to read the book seriously, to think not about Adolf Hitler and historic crimes. Hitler is simply the distancing medium, but to think about ourselves, our moral assumptions, our ideas of heroism, our desires to lead or to be led, our righteous wars. What Spinrad is trying to tell us is that it is happening here. Now I'm going to turn to a brief excerpt from the opening of this novel. With a great groaning of tired metal and a hiss of escaping steam, the road steamer from Gourmand came to a halt.
Oh, it's the bikers, isn't it?
Hormai Depot, a mere 3 hours late. Quite a respectable performance by Borgravian standards. Assorted, roughly humanoid creatures shambled from the steamer.
Oh no, okay.
Displaying the usual Borgravian variety of skin hues, body parts, and gaits. Bits of food from the more or less continuous picnic that these mutants had held throughout the 12-hour trip hung to their rude and for the most part threadbare clothing.
Their rude clothing?
Sour, stale odor clung to this gaggle of motley specimens as they scuttled across the muddy courtyard toward the unadorned concrete shed that served as a terminal. Finally, there emerged from the cabin of the steamer a figure of startling and unexpected nobility. A tall, powerfully built, true human in the prime of manhood. His hair was yellow, his skin was fair, his eyes were blue and brilliant. His musculature, skeletal structure, and carriage were letter perfect, and his trim blue tunic was clean and in good repair. Fredric Jagar looked every inch the genotypically pure human that he, in fact, was. It was all that made such prolonged close confinement with the dregs of Borgravia bearable. The quasi-men could not help but recognize his genetic purity. The sight of Fredric put mutants and mongrels in their place, and for the most part, they kept to it. Fredric carried his worldly possessions in a leather bag, which he hefted easily. This enabled him to avoid the grubby terminal entirely and embark directly upon Ulm Avenue, which led through the foul little border town toward the bridge over the Ulm by the shortest route possible. Today he would at last put the Bogravian Warrens behind him and claim his birthright as a genotypically pure human and an elder with a spotless pedigree that was traceable back for 12 generations. With his heart filled with thoughts of his goal in fact and in spirit, Fredric was almost able to ignore the sordid spectacle that assailed his eyes, ears, and nostrils as he loped up the bare earth boulevard toward the river. Ulm Avenue was little more than a muddy ditch between two rows of rude shacks constructed for the most part of crudely dressed timber, wattle, and rusted sheet steel. Nevertheless, this singularly unimpressive track was apparently the pride and joy of the denizens of Portmine, for the fronts of these filthy buildings were festooned with all manner of garish lettering and rude illustrations, advertising the goods to be had within, mostly local produce, or the cast-off artifacts of higher civilization across the Yonne. Moreover, many of the shopkeepers had set up street stands purveying rotten-looking fruit, grimy vegetables, and fly-speckled meat. These fetid goods they hawked at the top of their lungs to the creatures which thronged the streets, who in turn added to the din with shrill and argumentative cajolery.
Cajolery?
Raucous jabber, and generally unwholesome atmosphere reminded Fair of the great marketplace area of Ormond, the Borgavian capital, where fate had confined him for so many years. As a child, he had been shielded from close contact with the environs of the native quarter. As a young man, he had taken great pains, and at no little expense, to avoid such places as much as was practicable. Of course, it had never been possible to avoid the sight of the sorts of mutants who crowded every nook and cranny of Ormond, and the June pool here in Portmine appeared not one whit less debased than that which prevailed in Borgavian capital. The skins of the street rabble here, as in Ormond, were a crazy quilt of mongrelized mutations. Blue skins, lizard head, harlequins, and blood faces were the least of it.
Blue skins, lizard men, blood skins, parrot faces, toad heads.
The scales of lizard man might be tinted blue or purple instead of green. A blue skin might have the mottling of a harlequin, the warded countenance of a toad man.
It sounds like they're just cool, Fredric, and you're not.
Grosser mutations, for the most part, bred truer, if only because two such genetic catastrophes in the same creature ended more often than not in an unviable fetus. Many of the shopkeepers here in Portmine were divorced of one kind of another. Hunchback, covered with wiry black hair, slightly pinhead, many with secondary skin mutations, incapable of more strenuous labor. In the small town, such as this, the more arcane mutants were less in evidence than in what passed for a Borgavian metropolis. Still, as Fredric elbowed his way through the foul-smelling crowd, he spotted 3 eggheads, their naked, chitinous skulls gleaming redly in the warm sun and brushed against a parrot face. This creature whirled about at Fredric's touch, clacking its great bony beak at him indignantly for a moment, until it recognized him for what he was. Then, of course, the parrot face lowered its rheumy gaze, instantly gave off flapping its obscenely mutated teeth, and muttered a properly humble "Your pardon, young man." For his part, Fredric did not acknowledge the creature one way or the other, and quickly continued on up the street, staring determinedly straight ahead.
Wow, the coolest guy.
So, folks, this is essentially a kind of simulation of Hitler's Nazi fantasies running wild within the pages of a pulp science fiction novel. So now I'm going to talk with Norman Spinrad, and you can learn a few things perhaps about what he feels regarding Trump time and the world.
Trump time, okay, so post 2016. Awesome, awesome.
Seems that much more relevant.
Holy shit, okay.
First question I have, Norman, is what was your thought process when you were writing The Iron Dream all those years ago?
Well, the thought process, you mean how I came to write it, or what the process was? The process of it was that I was trying to, I don't know, you know, to write the thing from the point of view of Hitler, who was not that good a writer, and to try and explain Nazi Germany in non-completely economic terms, which it wasn't. And I came to the thing when I was living in London, and Mike Moorcock was writing all these fantasy things, and he could turn them out. You know, and I said, "What's the secret, Mike?" And he said, "Well, you take a piece of history or a piece of mythology or something like that, and you pump it full of, phallocratic and that sort of psychosexual stuff, and that's how you do it." And I said, "Oh," it just came to me. I said, "Like, oh, you mean like Nazi Germany?" And that's what started the whole thing.
Okay. The novel is, roughly speaking, almost a postmodernist spin on it because it's a novel within a novel. It seems
It's a double alternative history. It's one alternative history inside another alternative history.
And I'm curious what other texts, whether it was like Borges or Garcia Lorca, how they might have informed the way you formulated this.
Okay. First off, a lot of good shit, Jameson. A lot of good shit, SPINRAD'S here. But also, Jaw says, accidental callback. While trying to remember Brechtian, I found this in its wiki. It is as quite at least Fredric Jameson to contrast Brechtian theater favorably with what he calls the well-made production. Insofar as its preservation of the actor's process and the final product acts as a form of demystification and defetishization, and it exploits the potential strength of medium of theater. Yes, Fredric Jameson's a good person to keep in mind and carry forward as we keep talking about things, because I believe in like this Brechtian sense of media is fake. I don't care how realistic something's trying to be. I care about what it's trying to do with its artificiality and what it's trying to hit on a level above like realism. What I mean by that is like fiction can't comprehend just reality in its complete complexity. Fiction can't provide answers, but it can raise some damn good questions is the way I think of it. And to think of the Brechtian device, that's where there's something within the fiction that you recognize as fake or harsh or artificial in a way that makes you put it in contrast to what the thing is saying is real and makes you kind of contemplate that. It's real cool. Brecht is someone worth reading and looking into. I haven't really thought much on them. I just know roughly like there's like Brecht's theory for the sake of like plays and kind of like metatextual readings. But that might be something worth bringing to the channel in time. I definitely will circle around and read Jameson's Archaeologies of the Future of the Future, maybe next fall. Next time we fall into the future, but I think it's going to be a while because I also have that cowboy country thing on mind, and I really want to get to Slotkin and the American West and the history of that. Let's continue on with this pod for now.
Not really.
Also, actually, just one last thing I want to say is I want to compliment this cool outdoor level. It's a great colorful change from the first game.
I came with the idea was I wanted to tell this story, and this is the way I had to do it. It seemed obvious, to me at that point. It was also, a thing that seems simplistic, but it's true. That in the 30s, there was space opera was very popular, and Hitler was a big fan of Wagner, which was that same kind of psychological, mythological, fascistic opera, and that there was a connection, a psychological connection between the two things, and that's where all that came from. Generally speaking, I've done a lot of what people might consider experimental writing, but it's usually because that's what it seems to me you have to, at any given time, is what you have to do to tell a story. So no, I was not. I mean, there was still K. Man in the High Castle. You can't escape that. Which was also a double thing like that. It was on the one hand the alternate history where the Japanese and the Nazis win, and then there's a part of it where the main character has a dream or something of our reality where they lost. So it's a double. You know, again, that's the only thing I can think of that I was probably thinking of at the time, was that there was a double alternative history, one inside the other.
Okay. What were the politics and the things going on around you when you were writing this that you think might have most immediately impacted you at that time? Because this was the 70s.
Yeah, it was early 70s. I don't know. It was the results of all the things that happened in 1968, I suppose, in a way, where you know, the counterculture was sort of politically defeated. What happened in Czechoslovakia and in Hungary, where those revolutions against Soviet fascism, psychological fascism, were put down. There was also a kind of thing going on in science fiction, which is very strong, of the so-called New Wave, which is a different sort of stuff rather than the space opera stuff, which was, I wouldn't say fascist, but had some kind of authoritarian, heroic framework, such as Wagner's opera or various things like that. You know, I don't really dwell on where I got these ideas usually. It's just something that came up. Except that I was always not convinced about, you know, how could a country like Germany become a country like Nazi Germany? And the Marxist explanations or the economic explanations didn't seem to really tell the story for me. Well, that this was something that was going on psychologically, as was what was going on in the political struggle, really, political literary conflict between the old form of science fiction, the heroic stuff, and what the New Wave was doing in terms of literature, in terms of literary things, and in terms of psycho-political stuff.
So you're making reference here to kind of mindset and the psychology. We've got some people these days about the landscape who are rather frightening in their politics and able to take up high offices. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about groups like the alt-right and these fascist-leaning ideologues. And
well, it's very complicated, and again, it's very simple. What we're seeing right now is a crisis in electoral democracy itself. Trump is the obvious thing. Political parties don't matter anymore because of the internet, because of Facebook, because of all of that social media, and people call the media fake media, and that's Trump. Trump was listen, I wrote Bug Jack Barron, in which Jack Barron from the left is a former political guy who becomes a TV guy who ends up running for president on a multi-party ticket where the party politics no longer means anything. That's what you get. It becomes personalized, or as I said in a book called Pictures at 11,
individuated.
Washington. And that's what's happened.
mm-hmm.
Show business, I mean, Jack Barron, then you had Berlusconi, now you have Trump. who came, up The Apprentice, where his job was to fire. He liked to fire people. That was his whole format. So it's that. It's a genuine party. You see it here in France, and Macron, who is not that sort of that sort of person necessarily, but he ran out while on being Macron and created a non-political party just to say he had a political party. All that's gone. That's dying. It's dead. It's killed by personal politics, by personality politics, by all magnified by the media. Hitler was 100% that, even with less sophisticated media. That's what it was. That's what it's all about. Alternate left, alternate right. What you're seeing here is tribalism. Fragmented and fragmented and fragmented.
Salutations, Darley.
You have the alt-right. You have the NLBTL2. You can't remember that,
SPINRAD. Don't equivocate those ones.
Lesbian, queer, whatever it is, which all to me sounds like a tomato and lettuce sandwich.
Oh, no.
All breaking it down into smaller and smaller tribal pieces and making it much easier, in a way, for somebody like Trump to simply run on hate.
Yes, D on my day.
Run on hate. He's got a tribe that's a minority, but maybe it's a plurality, because everything else is fragmented. You have what's going on now with Me Too in the States, and you have on the other side the Trump people are violently against that, and it's hatred and adrenaline, and it has to do with the social media. I mean, Trump spends all of his time tweeting. Even Hitler didn't do that because he didn't have the means. He actually did some work.
Hitler would have been a poster.
You have that. That's what's going on, I think, and in relationship to the Iron Dream, that's what I was seeing when I wrote that. It was before, the social media stuff. It was before the internet, in fact. But you could see that the Nazis, Hitler spent, this is true, Hitler spent as much careful time designing the clothes, the colors of the flag, the music, all of that stuff, and with someone like Goebbels, as he did with political program. There it was. It was, in a kind of way, show business. But show business from a deep psychosexual level. And it was running on that. You're seeing that now. It's divide and conquer in a way. It's fragment. It's taking like a thing like Trump's movement or what's his face in Hungary, where there's a plurality, that's your tribe, and you then break up everything else into tribal groups that are fighting each other. You see that in the States right now with a vengeance. Both sides now all sides are becoming enemies of each other in a very fragmented way. And there's nobody putting it together. Now Obama comes out, and it's pathetic that the leader of the Democratic Party now, the only one that's got any center of support is Obama, who can't run for president again. If he could, they would certainly nominate him because they have nothing else.
Yep, built up
The
that
other
cult.
side is Trump, and even if Trump is impeached, then you get Pence, who believes that there were dinosaurs on Noah's Ark.
Right.
There were dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. I guess they threw the dinosaurs off in the water, and that's why there were no more dinosaurs. But you're getting a situation like that. You're seeing it in a lot of different countries. You're seeing it, and you're seeing the mess in England. it's the same thing. It's tribalism versus it's tribalism versus electoral democracy. Period. Because these are the real enemies. The economic differences are real and all of that, but this is where the various sides, and there are more than two sides.
Yeah, they had one guy, and he alienated most of the labor unions.
Right.
I don't know how much that has to do with the Iron Dream, but in a way it does. In a way it does. You know, the Jews were not so much a scapegoat for what had happened, in Versailles and all that. They weren't a scapegoat. They were something to hate. Something to hate. Something to get the adrenaline going in the population. It could have been anything. They had enough Jews to make it Jews. It could have been.
What up, A.R.
else.
Berlin?
If there had been enough French-speaking people, there would have been the frogs. That's what's going on now. Now you have like men versus women, black versus white, the 1% versus, the 0%. It's fragmenting. It's destroying
This is what Sartre is getting at with anti-Semitism and Jew, where the anti-Semitic impulse creates a scapegoat that is unreal and not actually what like Jewish people on the ground are like, but it's a useful thing to hate, to vent, to get angry at. And yeah, I feel Norman, I get kind of what Norman's saying, because like what Sartre is saying is like this device is like something that could then be used on things other than like, he's describing an anti-Semitic engine, but what he's describing is a detached from ethnic specificity, like method of human culture in which a population is chosen to be a scapegoat, to be genocided. And I think that's kind of what Norman's getting at here, although it's... Indo versus exoskeletons. The only good bug is a dead bug. Would you like to know more? But yeah, I also do think he's just an older dude who has just a different, lens on the situation because of his age and position, therefore. Like, I agree with what was said in the chat earlier, which is pretty stock old man responses so far, albeit leftist old man. Like, yeah. Like, I get what he's trying to say with the false equivalency. It's just you might want to update your examples, because I don't think Me Too and Nazis are exactly equal on the scale if you were to put those on two sides of a balance.
It's worse in the United States because in a parliamentary system, when you get somebody like Trump come in, you can get him out at any time through a parliamentary procedure. In the States, you're stuck with somebody like this. Just as the Germans the Nazis, the Germans were stuck with Hitler. There was no way to vote him out. And the same thing with Stalin in Russia. I'm reading a very interesting book now that Don had a library. It's called The Rape of the Mind. This is written in the 50s, before there was any internet or anything like that. But it's very good on this, that about the psychosexual methods, political methods, that people know what they're doing. The same thing now. You have this thing with Facebook, and it turns out that they knew what all these clicks were doing. They knew how it was affecting people's brains. They knew it was doing everything, and they knew that was the way to make money. And they did it. And now the people who invented it are let's say, mea culpa, and they're trying to stop it. But they can't stop it. Well, all right. That's the answer to that part of the question.
No, that's great. Thank you. One of the things that Ursula K. Le Guin brought up when she wrote an essay about the Iron Dream was the way that the mind of the science fiction fan and reader operates and the level it's operating on as a consumer of science fiction, and the kind of overlap with the people who are susceptible to extreme politics on either the left or the right, in the way that they are all the time, in all those circumstances, being taken in by a rather romantic sort of narrative. And I'm wondering...
I think centrism's the new extremism.
Politics, the cult of the hero.
Mm-hmm.
You have the cult of the hero. You can see that in that kind of science fiction. You see that Hitler, Mussolini understood it even better. He had a better sense of humor. Hitler, Mussolini, what you see now, Trump, Berlusconi, the natural desire of people, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, the famous book. That's very deep human psychology, mythical psychology. The hero, whether it's a physical hero or psychological hero, people born heroes. It's the same kind of thing as in a different kind of way as rock fans say. Sympathy for the Devil, the Rolling Stones song. I mean, Mick Jagger nailed that.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what he was saying. But it's that. It's the desire. And when it comes to drama, it goes back so far. When it comes to drama in a broader sense, including written fiction, you sort of have to have an identification figure, which the reader or the listener or whatever identifies and experiences the story from the point of view of the heroic, triumphant person. That's fiction, unless it's tragedy, and that person fails. So you see it in science fiction, you see it in Marvel comics and endless Marvel films, that sort of stuff. It's what Mike Wilcott was talking about when I asked him how you do this kind of stuff. Mike knew exactly what he was doing and exactly how it worked, and he was doing it to get the money to support New Worlds Magazine, where he was doing the opposite thing. That's as old as humanity, probably. You look at Homer, you look at Gilgamesh, how far back do you have to go? Moses. That's so fundamental. And that people who are successful, who know how to put on that suit, succeed. Hitler, Mick Jagger, who else? Superman, Captain Marvel, all of them. Captain Marvel, Superman, Ubermensch. There it is. Right there.
Nice.
It's a natural human tendency, but now you have people. People literally could always use that. None are political people who understand very, very, very deeply, and even scientifically, how to make that work. So
good one, Ja.
Into that role. One of the powers of Trump, now that I think of it, is simply he's spending most of his time doing tweets. He's not really doing much of anything else, but he's in total contact with his fan club all the time. No political leader has ever done that before. Hitler couldn't even do that. He might have done it if he had the technology. That's what's going on.
Right.
And I guess that's what Ursula was talking about, and that is what the Iron Dream. The Iron Dream was before this all this media stuff that was possible. Although I put some of that, they had television, didn't they? Yes, they did. Fredric they had television already. They're already doing television. But with television and then social media, it really is a challenge to electoral democracy, because electoral democracy is supposed to work by the right wing has this program and the left wing has this program.
I think what it is for me in identifying all this stuff is what fascism is it's the misapplication of a personal individualist narrative to a macro cultural need. Like, there are certain tendencies of self-discipline and self-control that you on an individual level should practice and execute that doesn't make for good legal or like macro social practice. If there's an alleyway loaded with crime, you may not want to walk down that alleyway as an individual. So as an individual, you'll internalize, like, don't go there, bad stuff's there. As a society, though, we have the means to make that alleyway safer. We shouldn't say as legal rule, just don't go down that alley, because then that just permits whatever's happening in that alley to continue on happening instead of it being managed and made safer. But yeah, there's an interesting kind of like everybody projecting their personal narrative into the macro idea of what the country needs or what the country should do, and it's like a very insidious corruption, because on the individual level you're thinking very like survivalist zero-sum terms that like doesn't benefit the macro level the same way. There's an inflection point when you go from managing yourself as one body to managing organizations and groups of people. You have to account for pluralities in ways that just the idea doesn't hold up for. Anyways, back to SPINRAD.
You agree with this economic program, or you don't. You agree with that one. Now, that's not what people get elected on. They get elected on the same way that cars or food or drugs or whatever
nice.
are being promoted. People like Trump have no consistent political program. Republican Party doesn't stand for anything at all. And it's becoming the Democratic Party doesn't stand for anything at all either, except maybe for Bernie Sanders. It stands for what they are against. Even here
he's a Bernie
in France,
bro.
Macron only had a vague...
Hell yeah.
People didn't know what they were voting for. Technical stuff. They were voting against Marine Le Pen because they knew what they were against. They were against that sort of right-wing fascism. But they weren't voting for anything in particular. And the reason that Macron succeeded was that the other parties in the so-called left and the so-called right center had no coherent policies either. But he had the personality. And that's how he won. He understood that. He said he didn't bother, trying to really win a party nomination. The same thing in the States now. Now, I think, in the next presidential election, may very well be that somebody like Trump or somebody even like Bernie Sanders will say, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm me. I'm the great I am. Mm-hmm. And vote for me. Vote for Captain Marvel. Vote for Captain Marvel. Vote for Gilgamesh. Vote for Mick Jagger. Vote for Donald Trump. Vote for Ronald McDonald, for that matter. That's what's happening.
There's a long history of American expats going to France and finding a different type of audience for their writing. I was wondering if you could kind of describe what it's like being in Paris and the...
Oh, wow, he got out. Interesting.
That science fiction and fantasy gets on that side of the Atlantic.
Well, there's a lot of... When I first came here, I lived here for 15 years, went back and forth. When I first came here, most of the science fiction that was being published was translations of American stuff, including me. Perhaps because of my presence here for those period of times, the things I was doing and things I was saying was part of it, and like Bojack Brown was an important book politically.
All all sides, it was General Heinz Guderian of the German army whose groundbreaking strategies and tactics led to the creation of the dreaded panzer divisions he later commanded. Other generals, such as Rommel, used the destructive power of these multi-ton armor-plated Goliaths to put Germany far ahead of the Allies in the early days of the war.
We're going to continue the pod. I just paused it for the mission end celebration there. That was fun. That made use of the stealth elements from the first game, except in a way less frustrating manner, and the optional photography shit. That was pretty cool. I liked that when you looked down the barrel to take a photo of the troops, they did their poses. Made it very intense feeling to shoot someone's photo and then when they turn around, pop them in the back of the head. But hey, it's war. What are you gonna do? All right, let's see what the next mission is.
It's good to see you back from North Africa.
Oh, we're going to Crete, huh?
There's no time to waste.
So
as we have a
France,
tricky
North
new
Africa,
assignment for you.
Crete, yeah.
As part of a continuing mission to
These
legitimize their
locations,
bloodthirsty conquest,
amazing.
the Nazis have announced a major archaeological excavation on the Greek island of Crete. Unfortunately for the priceless architecture and relics there, the Germans are defacing, not digging. Although the Third Reich only dates back a decade, the Nazis are desperately trying to establish their pedigree as one that stretches all the way back to antiquity. Employing phony archaeologists with forged credentials, the Germans are planting evidence, doctoring reports, and even going so far as to carve swastikas into the walls of these ancient ruins. Normally, this pathetic propaganda effort would not be worth our attention. But the dig is also serving as cover for the installation of a massive artillery battery that, if allowed to become operational, would bring Allied shipping to a halt in the region.
Yeah, it's not that we
cannot
care
allow
about
that to
culture
happen,
or anything.
especially at this
There's
crucial
war
stage of the
happening.
war. These guns are heavily fortified within the excavated sublevels of the coastal wall. Obviously, because of the historic location, airstrikes are currently out of the question. That's why we're sending you in. Since it worked well in Casablanca, you'll be undercover again as a foreign correspondent armed with a camera.
All right.
Your mission is to infiltrate the dig and prevent further molestation of the site. Then locate the big guns and carefully take them out of commission. You'll travel to Crete aboard a stolen Italian trawler. Be at the dock by 0800 hours tomorrow morning. Bon voyage.
All right, back we go. So I didn't say much about it, but yeah, the whole camera thing is nice, especially knowing they were trying to consciously get away from being a Doom-type shoot-'em-up. That's what's compelling about this to me. You know, I was asking earlier about Call of Duty, but Call of Duty becomes so multiplayer-focused that they don't do the same kind of care in the narrative that you see here. Once again, the PlayStation 1 did not have any kind of online features. There was no leaderboards, there was no lobbies, there were no servers, there's no PvP. I mean, there's split-screen multiplayer, yes, but they really wanted to make this campaign shine. Also, this was pre-9/11, and there was still like a sense of trying to be respectful and delicate with the military. You know, once the global war on terror starts, America, fuck yeah. Any cynical cash-in on military imagery is free to go. If you didn't see it last year on the 4th of July, we played Fugitive Hunter, War on Terror, a very shitty first-person shooter for the PlayStation 2. It's an excellent case of just the innuendo of Empire laid bare. You see how little actual care was put into the thing, and it's just crutching on the imagery of 9/11 and the anger at terrorism that America had in 2002 to hopefully sell you a product. Yeah, I wasn't saying much because I was letting the podcast rip, but like when I whipped out the camera and the soldier started posing, that was a cool, just nice consideration there, game. Wonderful consideration. All right, we're going to continue on with the pod.
And, so forth, is that I paid back in a way, maybe. years later, the French writers are much more front and center in their own country, and they're writing much better stuff than they were, and they have evolved. I mean, I'm doing, I do reviews for Asimov, and I'm finding that the more interesting things that I tend to be reviewing are not written by Americans or Brits. There's one written by
Crossfire.
but they're written by French writers. They're written by and it's sometimes in translation back into English. Algerian French writers. It's grown up. It started really well. It's a whole complicated story, but basically it all started with Jules Verne. Science fiction itself started with Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, not with an American. And so there was always a literary side in France and in England to science fiction from the very beginning, before it became the kind of genre stuff. It only became genre later. Then after World War II, especially in France, it became all American genre stuff and British stuff. I didn't come here because I don't consider myself a refugee yet, or a political.
Some of what he was saying earlier makes sense, considering he hasn't been in America for a moment either. Like, I can see him by proxy doing both sides of the same thing, just not really knowing how bad things are in America.
It wasn't really a political move. I was still being published in English, in German, in Italian, in Estonian, whatever. So I was always felt as a world writer. Right now, things the way they are in the States, I'm having a lot of trouble being published in the States as I used to. Everything that I've written, with the exception of 2 novels, I think everything novels that I've written are still more or less in print in French, not in the States, except on with ebooks and stuff like that. But I've been publishing, during the period, I've been publishing, I don't know, 15 or 20 languages, something like that. So living, I guess if it did one thing, it gave me a more worldwide picture of what my identity was, what literature was, what culture was, and I think that's why I feel more comfortable here. Not so much because I'm fleeing from what's going on in the States. I mean, in the 60s and in the 70s, I was very political. I had a lot of trouble like that, but I wasn't. I had an FBI file and all that crap, but I was never really arrested or formally censored or anything like that.
Yeah, he's not Howard Fast.
It was just the culture at the time. I am still culturally, politically engaged in a way, but I didn't come here. I came here because I wanted to be here and liked it here, and not because I was escaping from something. Or as I used to say, people, another answer to this question, why are you here instead of in Europe instead of the States? And I say, well, what I find is that Europe, it's not just another world, it's another solar system. It's got big planets, it's got France, Germany, England, it's got smaller planets like Hungary and Romania and Greece. And as a writer, as an artist, it's just more interesting. Way, way, way back, I was writing stories which I didn't realize at the time had an overall thing, and that's what I call the transformation crisis. That any civilization anywhere in the galaxy is going to go through a transformation crisis where we, well, particularly for us, where you can destroy the planet and yourselves, one way or another. Atomic weapons, Hiroshima. Climate change, ruining the actual biosphere. Running out of things like gas and coal before you have another viable source of energy. Wars. This is what I call the transformation crisis. We're right in the middle of it now. If we come through it as a species, we might last, for billions of years as a high civilization, or we might destroy ourselves in any one of several ways. And I take hope in the fact that we have had the nuclear weapons since 1945. The Soviet Union had them, disappeared. The United States lost a war in Vietnam, and it's losing a couple of other wars now. Never used them. And I think that's a positive thing. Well, we have evolved to the point where we're not going to commit that kind of suicide. I'm not really interested in getting rid of all nuclear weapons. I don't think it matters, because I think they're not going to be used. You have, if you look back, even a couple of hundred years, you see that slavery was accepted more or less. Now it's not. The position of women as chattel, if you look back 2 or 3 centuries, and then you look now, you see that there is moral evolution. We have had moral evolution, positive moral evolution as a species. Whether we will continue to do it, to do that or not, is why it's a transformation crisis. We don't know, and we're right in the middle of it. We're right in the middle of it. All the chickens are coming home to roost now. It was Heinlein who wrote something called the year of the jackpot. It's a year in which all the things, all the horrible things that could happen, all happen at the same time. Well, if you look at what's going on now, there's a lot of that going on. But there's a lot of other good things going on too.
Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we're gonna
Oh,
hope to
what
hear
an
from you
end.
next
Okay.
time.
What? Whoa. That was a bit abrupt, but all right then. I got one other thing I kind of want to pull up before we end tonight that I think is relevant to what we're doing, but let's shoot a few things first, why don't we? Yeah, what an ending. Also, chat, I need to catch up with you. I know y'all were going off while SPINRAD was talking. I kind of didn't want to pause SPINRAD talking any more than I already had. Oh, I think I just hop on this truck and I'm fine. Yeah, cool. Cool. All right, let me queue up what I want to do next on the old YouTube here. Yes. All right, gang, I'm going to let one more little video rip, which is a video I had in mind while reading The Iron Dream, just thinking about the fascist fantasies of it all, and knowing that at the end there is going to be a commentary chapter commenting on the what we just read, the fantasy narrative of everything. So I don't know how this is going to affect the copyright. We'll see if we get copyright struck, because I'm just going to play a full comedy skit, but it's from someone I love, and you know what? It's more related to Resident Evil than you may realize. But of course, there's a YouTube ad.
Showshon the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
And now it's time for Showshon the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
Showshon the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
Creatures of Animalia, be silent and listen. Shoshan the Elegant is about to make the day's decrees.
I decree that at the end of the month there will be a grand parade, and all in my kingdom are invited, except for the brown tigers.
Shoshan the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
That was a great parade, Shoshan.
That was a great parade, except for some disturbances caused by a few ungainly brown tigers that showed up. I hereby decree that a giant fence should be erected to keep all the brown tigers out of the White Tiger Kingdom.
White Tiger Kingdom! White Tiger Kingdom!
Shoshan the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
Some brown tigers shall be allowed into the kingdom to perform menial tasks. These brown tigers shall not speak, or look at, or think about any white tigers while they are within the walls of the White Tiger Kingdom.
White Tiger Kingdom! White Tiger Kingdom!
Shoshan the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
If a white tiger shall be found laying with a brown tiger, then the white tiger shall be held accountable and banished, and the brown tiger shall be liquidated.
Liquidated. The White Tiger King.
Any spawn of the union of a brown tiger and a white tiger shall be found unclean. Unclean!
Unclean! White Tiger Kingdom! White Tiger Kingdom!
Shoshan the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
Trash collecting day will be every Tuesday. Park your car on the right side of the street the first and third Tuesdays of each month. Park your car on the left side every alternating Tuesday. White Tiger Kingdom!
White Tiger Kingdom! White Tiger Kingdom!
Shoshan the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
We will move across their borders and pick our teeth with their bones. We will flush them from their homes and crush them beneath our paws. We will finally be free of the filthy brown tigers once and for all. White Tiger World! White Tiger World!
Shoshan the Elegant, the White Tiger King.
That was the story of Shoshan the Elegant, the White Tiger King. Shoshan went on to smite the filthy brown tigers from the face of the earth. And the people were happy once again for all time. You see, kids, fascism has its faults, and people get carried away. But at the end of the day, a totalitarian form of government works. I'm not saying what Shoshan did was right or wrong, but it worked. It just worked. Good night, kids.
Binge of the races, storytelling spirit.
Gee, why did the racist storytelling spirit come to mind in this book I was reading where Fredric Jaeger and his men join in complete racial harmony and become a super mech Helden to stomp their enemies? I just don't know. I don't see the connection. I don't understand why was I thinking about White Tiger Kings while reading about the fantasy land of Zend. All right, let me catch up on the chat really quick, and then I'm going to sign off for the night. As a reminder, back on Thursday with Conscript. I'm going to continue playing Underground. It's going to be kind of the filler game. The primary game on Mondays and Thursdays is Conscript, the World War I horror game. Having a lot of fun with that. It's very Resident Evil. It's very Dark Souls. I keep saying that, but I just don't know if people are aware. We're playing Conscript, gang, Mondays and Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. CST. We're going to be reading All Quiet on the Western Front while playing Conscript. We're going to watch All Quiet on the Western Front, but first we're going to watch Paths of Glory. We're going to explore a bit of World War I while we continue on with the underground aspects of World War II. But really quick, a Ghost Bro, I'm just seeing... Jari says, Modern Warfare 2's No Russian mission was a rare time that a war game gave me pause and considered the repercussions of my actions. Actually, chat, if you can't think of it right now, maybe come at me next session as we get back to the more horrific World War I game where things are much more nihilistic. What's the worst of video games made you feel about killing something or someone? Hard mode, don't come at me with pets. Like, it has to be other human characters, because like it's very easy to be like, oh, it sucked when I had to shoot a dog in Medal of Honor, or like fighting the Great Grey Wolf Seif in Dark Souls, or any of the animal characters you feel feelings towards. I want to know if a video game's made you feel bad on like a fundamentally like human betraying human level. Did a video game ever make you feel like you committed the sin of Cain in that you struck your brother down in a way that was irrevocable? A Ghostbur says, I felt the same way about the part of the first Modern Warfare where you do the bombing overflight and it's all through night scope. That's definitely some fucked up stuff there, Ghost Bro. That was just like such a huge normalizing tool as well. Like what Call of Duty did was very different than what like Medal of Honor was doing, because Medal of Honor, until Call of Duty jumped into the Modern Warfare, was removed. It was in the past. There was a diminishing sheen of edutainment and pristine to like this respectable look at history in the Medal of Honor franchise. Once Modern Warfare was like, hey, you want to pilot a drone and strike dudes and it looks exactly like the drone strike footage you see coming out of the Global War on Terror, something broke. Something broke. But yeah, we'll be back Thursday. See you then. Y'all take care. Have a good night. I'm signing off. I don't know. I may do the Underground Irregulars. This was a special late Tuesday session. Sometimes my Wednesdays and Fridays are a bit flexible right now, though. I'm just going to kind of play it by ear. See y'all later. See you Thursday for sure, though, and Sunday for Paths of Glory, most definitely. Good night, y'all. Take care.